Okay, everything should be ready to go, and we are live. Thanks very much, everyone, for attending wherever you are right now. You have joined into our BrisJS presentation for September. Just a shout out that we're just waiting to get people in and get all the buffering going. So I just usually give everyone a few minutes. What I'm going to do is put up the Slido page here. We use Slido to be able to get your feedback as we are live streaming. So you also have the option of doing live chat in the YouTube chat. We'll be monitoring that one as well. But Slido is great to be able to post questions to our presenter tonight, Dominic, who's going to be looking at the, well, I'll be able to relay those questions asynchronously at the end of his talk, and then we can go through and get some Q&A happening. So it's good. All right, we're starting to see some viewers climbing. So thanks very much for joining us, everyone. I will start the preamble in probably about a minute. Keep everything going. Thank you to everyone last month for actually going in and voting on our giveaway, monthly giveaway prize. I'm going to announce the winner tonight. They've already got an email with their prize, which is the license for Quokka.js or Wallaby.js, so we'll acknowledge that again in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of people connecting, so I think we're ready to go. I will jump straight into the rest of this. Okay, everyone, so as is normal for our events, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of this site on which we broadcast from today, the Yugara and Bunjalung people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. As I've been saying in our previous months there, if you are unsure exactly who the traditional owners are of your site, it's really useful to go and educate yourself and check that out. Since we're broadcasting from here, I thought I'd start actually putting in the location, Yatla, and I think that way we can continue to pay those respects forward. Meetup, if you're not aware, we keep using Meetup to be able to organize at least some of the recurring calendared events and put a description out there of exactly what we're going to be demonstrating every month. This helps us be a little bit more organized. And if you are RSVPing to these live streams, that's great. That helps me kind of understand the popularity or the interest in a topic, and also helps me have yet another method of communication back to you in case of delays, events, reschedules, all those kinds of things, which we've experienced a bit of this month. So thanks very much for subscribing there. Code of conduct, this includes online. It's a harassment-free experience for everyone. So if you're not aware of our anti-harassment policy, our code of conduct, check it out on brisjs.org/conduct. Find it through there. This was super important, so important that I highlighted it with red font. We really need you to submit a talk. So we're really, really keen to have presenters lining up for the coming months. Don't feel like you need to do it immediately or that there's a time pressure if you can't commit to that time pressure. Having you on the board is really useful. We'll be able to keep following up and actually going and helping to set up the structure of that talk if that's the kind of support you need. But we'll be able to then set that up through the BrisJS GitHub issues. So we'll tag that and schedule it using the milestones in GitHub to sort of say exactly what month we'll be able to accept that talk in. Line up about 3 speakers usually, as is our current practice. From depending on length and talks, So we'll have 20 minutes or 40-minute blocks and some 10-minute lightning talks, or even less or more, depending on what we want to be able to put into a night. So this is the place where we kind of organize all that. Thank you very much to everyone who pointed out I need to do a little bit of cleanup. So I've done that in there, made sure that all the dates and things were current on there. For our socials, we've got our Facebook page, YouTube, of course, as you are watching from, and our Twitter is the most active, where I try and do call outs for speakers, as well as updates for any kind of delays or who's speaking that night, or trying to advertise a little bit. BrisJS.org is still a hub of different links that we can access there. It'll take you through to our meetup page as well. And if you're in need of a job, which is always useful, we try and maintain a GitHub-driven job board out of our GitHub issues. So if you want, please just follow the directions that are available on that link there, as well as just head over to our issues board. If you post something, GitHub issue in there, all it needs to do is I need to tag it with the correct tag for jobs and opportunities, and then it will appear on our website like magic. So it'll appear over there. Do check out those current opportunities, and we'll also hear a little bit from our sponsors. And while we've been doing all these things remote, we've enjoyed the benefits of a Zoom Pro subscription, so they can do this broadcasting and make sure that everyone can hear our lovely voices and see our wonderful presentations. So thank you very much to PCCW Global, who's been sponsoring that every month. Normally our in-person events are sponsored by pizza by these wonderful folks. And we also then have various sponsors for the drinks and for the meeting space and all sorts of things, but we'll get back to them as soon as we can get back to in real life presenting facilities. There's a couple of opportunities there that they're seeking. So if you're a senior to mid JS dev, they'd love to hear from you. I'm happy to facilitate that as well. So feel free to get in touch with me, and I can put you through to the hiring managers or HR. Same with Java software engineers, and perhaps you're a mix of both. So there's some opportunities there to be able to go and add to a new team. Wallaby has also been kind enough to support us with these licenses for software and developer productivity tools. So they make Wallaby.js and Quokka.js. They're able to interpret your, they're evaluating your code in real time, or running tests in real time in the background and showing inline hinting of the outcomes for those things. So it's an incredibly useful tool, very unique, and they'd love to hear you say hi on the Discord if you've got any questions. Thanks very much to Chris Colburn, who won the Wallaby.js license from last month. It does pay to answer our monthly quiz. So I'm going to put up a question from Dominic's presentation tonight. So as soon as he starts presenting and I can pick out something that I think, if somebody's paying attention to, they'll be able to answer that question. That'll go straight into our Slido feedback form that I'll open up soon. So hop on the Slido, and that way you can participate. And if there's multiple correct answers, I put them through a random choice algorithm, and we make sure we pick a winner. So this month we are actually going to pick up the Quokka.js license that's available, and that's the last one we've got in the sponsorship bucket. But yeah, I'll have a chat with those folks and see if they're keen to continue the giveaways for the rest of the year. So thanks very much to Wallaby for reaching out, firstly, for doing that, and also being able to give those things away to our participants. So thank you very much again. Okay, on tonight. So the value of building with a community. So Dominic Norton is with us today. He's going to be able to take you through that. It's a very timely thing. At the moment, we're, mostly distributed still, and depending on where you are in the world, depending on, your local COVID responses and things like that, the rise of online hackathons, online conferences, online meetups, all of these things have all gone straight into Zoom rooms and such streaming services. So the importance of understanding that hackathons are still out there and some great work is still going on by different communities is definitely worth highlighting there. So without too much further ado, I'm gonna hand it over straight to Dominic to jump into his presentation tonight. Take it
Hello,
away.
can everybody hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Certainly can.
So yeah, I'll get started. I'm Dominic Norton. I am a hackathon organizer, but I spend most of my time as a technology journalist. So I document stories from hackathons, from editathons, from innovation challenges about what communities are doing to solve some of the world's toughest problems. And my journey and this talk today has really been inspired by what I've seen in the collaboration space in hackathons and makeathons and business case competitions, different types of challenges, but it's also to talk a little bit about different challenges going on in those communities. So to give you a brief overview of how my journey has gone, I started in kind of teams at a very young age. I played basketball for the English national team. I'm based here in London right now, and I grew up playing basketball. So I've always been immersed in a team. I've always knew what the team environment was like, what it means to be a team player. I ended up going to play basketball in America at university. And again, I was still very much immersed in this team environment. But as the years went on, I started to become more interested in technology. And I spent a lot of time on my computer. When we was on road trips, I spent a lot of my time on my computer, learning JavaScript, learning different programming languages. And I really enjoyed that pursuit. And I think this is something that technologists, we as technologists, assuming everybody is a technologist, really take for granted, is although learning JavaScript or any programming language or any stack is a very, I don't want to say isolated exercise, but you have to learn by yourself in certain instances. You have to learn by yourself. A lot of what we build is collaborative. And I never really understood the true power of that until getting to hackathons. So starting this January, I started what's called Hackathon Entertainment, and it's a media company that publishes these stories. And what I'm going to share with you is some of the learning lessons, some of the challenges we're still having, not just in hackathons, but in society, and maybe some tools to really help you. So to start off with, what is a hackathon? This is a very broad term that's used in many different instances. I like to say it's a 48 problem-solving event where people come together and find solutions to some of the toughest problems. But depending on who you ask, you will get a completely different answer. In today's day, you have small communities hosting hackathons, you have governments hosting hackathons, you have startups hosting hackathons, you have corporate companies hosting internal and external hackathons to get developers using their APIs and to get their internal teams coming up with new ideas. So when you hear the word hackathon, or maybe you're on Meetup or Eventbrite looking for something to do over the weekend and you see a hackathon, I think it's definitely important to decide, what do you want to get from it? And does this particular hackathon align with what you want to really get from it? Because the word hackathon is very broad. But I gave you a little bit about my definition. But what I'm starting to see also is that along with hackathons, you have varying types of innovation events. So a hackathon typically will focus on a technical solution. Really, it doesn't have to. Like I said, it depends on the organizer. But you have editathons. So editathons are like, people come together to produce documents and documentation like Wikipedia or these kind of knowledge databases. I believe at the beginning of the introduction, there was an acknowledgement to the native people of certain parts of the land. And these events could be hosted to bring them together and collaborate to produce comprehensive documentation of where to find their land, how to attribute it the right way. And these are what these events are designed for, similar on the Wikipedia style. These are typically held by community organizations, corporate companies, not to say they're not interested, but they have a different value alignment to what editathons offer. Then you have makeathons. Makeathons are usually focused on hardware, but these are a couple different types of hackathon style events that it's really interesting to explore. And the way you would go about exploring it is exactly what I do to find guests or to find a new event. I go on Eventbrite or I go on Meetup, or there's certain other websites that I might put in the chat, like DevPost, you have Major League Hacking, you have all these different types of organizations that either host the events or they curate lots of different events for you to go to. But you might be thinking, why should I go to a hackathon? And this is the whole point of the talk, the value of building with a community. I cannot state enough how important it is to really build with a community. This is where I've done most of my learning. And especially if you're post-university or you're post that kind of university structure where you have lots of creative people bouncing ideas off each other, especially if you're in the corporate world where it might become a bit monotonous over time. You want to be in a really creative environment of people trying to come up with solutions to problems. And this is how you develop lots of really, really meaningful relationships. One of the latest interviews I did with a company that is now a startup, and they developed an idea out of a hackathon, and the timing was right to deploy it and go full time on it now during the self-isolation phase or during the COVID phase that we're going through right now, especially in the world. And they developed the relationships for their startup, for their personal lives from hackathons. So they would continuously go to the same hackathons or go to different hackathons with the same team over and over again. And this is how you really build really, really meaningful relationships with working with other people that really are invested in self-development, they're invested in solving meaningful problems. I know I've been speaking quite a while and I'm kind of looking at myself. I'm not sure if there's any questions with anything I said so far.
Not yet. I'll feel free to ping you here on the Zoom channel if there's any kind of breaking responses. But no, feel free, and we'll always be able to circle back at the end.
Okay. So yeah, so that's one benefit of hackathons, that you can really develop meaningful relationships. So if you, I don't know, if you're a parent and let's say if you have the opportunity to leave the house or in today's day, jump on a Zoom hackathon for a couple of hours, meet some new people, build with other people, that is a great opportunity to have. I think the diversity of experiences and ideas really enriches our life. I am currently working on some research to do with innovation challenges and corporations. And what I'm finding is it really impacts people's life in terms of producing divergent thinking. So divergent thinking is a good example is if I give any of you a paperclip and I ask you to come up with all the possible solutions of what that paperclip can be used for, divergent thinkers or people that are more divergent thinking can come up with lots and lots and lots of solutions. And as we go through our professional lives, and as we get older, just in regular life, it becomes more and more difficult to really think about divergent thinking and really think in new ways, how to build new systems. And hackathons can really give you a new kickstart. Another reason I advocate for people to attend hackathons and really embrace themselves in building community, especially in the tech fields that we are in, a lot of the relationships lead to jobs. So people get used to working with you. They might really love working with you. And they say, oh, have you thought about applying for this job for my company? Or there is a sponsor that's really interested, like was mentioned at the beginning. Usually there's a sponsor of a hackathon that is looking for great talent. And getting used to building with that community, you are almost exposed to opportunities a lot quicker than other people, which is amazing. That's an amazing advantage that cannot be overstated. A challenge that I'm consistently finding about hackathons is conversational behaviors. And although it's a challenge, it's an opportunity. If you have been exposed to a limited demographic or unlimited social group, especially in technology, we're typically exposed to a very limited demographic of people, at least here in the UK. Hackathons can really help you provide the skills to understand other groups in a way that you might not have the opportunity to in other dimensions of life or other institutions of life. One thing, I'm working on a talk about conversational behaviors, and in conversational behaviors, I really talk about triggers, I talk about gender pronouns, and I talk about stuff like mansplaining, I talk about microaggressions. These are all things that we as technologists really undervalue, especially working in teams. It's all good and well if you can be as smart as Elon Musk or Bill Gates or any of these technologies. You could be a really talented developer, but again, you do not develop in isolation. You develop in teams. And actually, when you're in a team, the solution you come to is the best compromise with the team. So you have to be able to really communicate and work in an effective way. And hackathons and these type of events are great for community building. They're great for developing those soft skills that I think over the last 20, 30, maybe 40 years, we have really undervalued those soft skills in the development. So I'm just going to take a look. I believe Rod said he ran hackathons and the hardest thing is finding good challenges. And I will write in the chat, or I'm not sure whether to write in YouTube or the chat, some good places to find it, to find hackathons. And Rod probably knows quite a few. But one, especially as a technologist, if we cannot find good challenges, there's always people that are like-minded that care about the stuff we care about. So for example, if you really care about homelessness and you cannot find any challenges to do in homelessness, I advocate people to host a hackathon or co-organize a hackathon. Or it doesn't have to be a hackathon in the traditional sense with prizes, and you can just bring a community together, like similar to this community. You can bring a community together and you can quote unquote hack a solution, or you can bring teams together and you can find ways to try to solve the solution or try to better the solution or try to understand the solution a lot more. I think too much, we focus on trying to find stuff too much. And if you have a brief look and it's not there, you can create it. And again, this is the benefit of building with a community. Communities really understand that, bring together people with like interests to build something that's not out there already. So I've been speaking quite a while. I'm gonna look at the chat again, see if there's any questions. No questions. I would advise, and if you're, whether you're a beginner or you're advanced, I would highly recommend building with a community, because one of the values of building with a community, you're building in public. One of the things I see, especially with people that maybe they want to start a business, or they want to start a what's now being called a side hustle. They want to build a multi-million-dollar startup that they're building in secret. And what I'm finding from my research is that that is coming from a place of fear, a place of pride, a place of maybe slight arrogance. It's very, very difficult to build in public, and hackathons and building with a community really helps you develop those skills of transparency, develops those skills of not keeping a project like it's your child, because that's not how innovation happens. That's not how change happens. You have to let other people touch the project, and hackathons are just an institution that allows you to do that. But it's about building with a community and allowing other people to touch the project, other people to influence. There's some interesting philosophical ideas on that, and that once you create something, it has a life of its own. And I believe the great thing about there's controversies, especially now, I believe, going on in Australia about Facebook and Twitter and a lot of the big tech companies, and you can add TikTok to that now. But the reason that they're like that is that lots of people have been allowed to touch it. You know, they call it the social network effect, but you can really add that to anything. If you allow other people to contribute and you build in a way other people can contribute, it really adds value to what you're doing, and it makes everybody have a sense of ownership. That's one of the things you really, really learn from hackathons, that the value of building in a community is that you get the best from everybody, and everybody feel like they've invested in this project, or invested in this movement, or invested in this marketing campaign to really impact change. And that makes what you're doing so much more powerful. So I am best with questions. That's why I keep looking for questions. Has anyone got any questions about hackathons, about challenges you've had in building communities?
There's a couple on the Slido at the moment, so I'll go start with the first one. How do you get around the feeling that hackathons just want you to make them an app for pizza? That's Will's question there.
And that's especially why you have different hackathons for different reasons. Like I said, hackathon is a broad sweeping term, and whether a startup's hosting it is different to whether a community organization like yours is hosting it, whether a big company, here in the UK, a lot of big banks have been hosting hackathons, or government's been hosting hackathons. And it's about what you want to get from it. Sometimes you might say, okay, I'll develop this app and it's whatever, but the relationships I'm going to get from it are far more meaningful than this app. One thing that I've learned from hackathons, and really covering a lot of different hackathons, is that you can do a hackathon for Google or Facebook, and they have the resources and they have the intellectual capital to take that app and turn it into something. It's still so hard to do that, especially without the initial team. And it's almost like, I am not scared that an organization is going to take my idea, because I understand how hard it is to execute an idea. It is, I mean, you have Google are trying to execute ideas every day, and there's lots of ideas that are failing. Most of their ideas are failing. It's extremely hard. But what you're getting from it as a person is mainly the relationships. Pizza's nice. I love pizza too. But it's the relationships with the people. Though I generally believe those are lifelong relationships, especially when it comes to building with a community. I don't think the difference between a hackathon and, I guess, just going to some networking event is that you're not building with people. I don't know, especially as technologists, there's a different energy to when you're actually building a project with someone, and it might not be like an amazing app or whatever. It might just be a regular website, but the fact that you have struggled with another person, you've helped each other, you laughed, you joked, maybe you've gone to the pub afterwards with each other. That's the start of a great relationship. That's the true value of hackathons, not the pizza, not the prizes. And I definitely think there's not a lot to worry about when it comes to the idea being taken by some organization. So, yeah.
Awesome. Great answer.
Another question?
Yeah, there's definitely another one. Well, actually, it was withdrawn. I think it's been answered. So it was around what's the best approach to developing hackathon challenges for technical companies. But I think that they felt that you've covered that. Then there you go.
Sorry, what was? Repeat that.
So what was the best approach to developing hackathon challenges for technical companies? So I guess it's around that community building then. So the way that they're structuring and build and sort of pitching that idea becomes more about the community focus there as well. In the same way that we do things here at BrisJS, we've been growing and sort of just trying to give everyone a voice here in Brisbane and having an open floor essentially to make sure that everyone can sort of talk about the cool thing that they tried the other day, or something that they've been doing that's grown into a massive startup, or any kind of experience in their tech journey, whether they've started out or whether they've been doing this for a million years. What's something that they can impart. So a lot of those things, I guess, happen from the corporate side as well.
I think, but it's particularly tough with corporates because it depends where the money's coming from. And I'm in two worlds. I understand the business of it, and as a technologist, sometimes I conflict with the business side. They might be trying to promote an API and they want developers to use the API. They're not really interested in building community. They just want developers to use the API, speak to their internal teams and develop that relationship with their internal teams. Sometimes it's just marketing. Maybe AWS might have released a new product and they want to host a hackathon to market it, and they can give away lots of money for the winner so they attract lots of people. When it comes to corporates, it's particularly different. It depends who's basically putting the money up for the event, and their values get pushed onto the event. Sometimes with university hackathons or community hackathons, the sponsors might particularly say something. I think the hackathons you really want to look out for are the ones that are reoccurring and the ones that they are nurturing community all the time, like you spoke about, and that's hard. If there's anyone out there that's really thinking about, I don't know, doing a startup or developing a product, especially as technologists, we can get away from this, and I did get away from this until seeing the value of community. That actually it's your community that's probably high priority over your product, and product managers will tell you that your users and your community dictate what you're developing. So you really have to nurture that. You have to take care of that, take care of your community. You have to fulfill their needs, even though it might not always seem logical. And you really understand that when you're building with a community. I think it's particularly hard there's a balance, especially depending on your personality. When you're in a team, especially like a self-organizing team that you're in at a hackathon, you are both a leader and a member. Everybody is both a leader and a member. So everybody has to both facilitate everybody else's abilities while contributing enough to be a meaningful member. And I think that's teams are incredibly hard, but especially the great teams can do that. The great teams, everyone takes ownership as a leader and make sure everybody else has the ability to contribute and has the ability to really feel like they're wanted there but they're also contributing their own ideas, but not too much that it drowns out everybody else. And the structures in most of our corporate jobs, the structures in most of the corporate setting are not like that, which is the power of building with a community. I think especially now, we have the opportunity with all the changes going on in the world to redesign what we think the workplace will be and redesign what we think companies can be. And this is the opportunity to really embrace new ways of doing, and building with a community really inspires you to do that.
And one of the other things there, taking it back to the question, is so you said you really have to see their angle. Really, if it's back to if it's a corporate sort of driven event, they've got something they want people to do, or there's a particular kind of angle they want to encourage people to follow. I guess it's just down to transparency. If you find an event that can really, I guess, instill the transparency there. Like you can see they're trying to be really, really open about what they're trying to achieve, what's going on, who's sponsoring it, why they're doing it. You know, that you got to understand their motivations. I guess it's probably really easy for us to get really jaded about, you know, the corporate machine and rage against that kind of idea. But I think, you know, there is definitely, there's a whole bunch of folks out there that really do want to engage with, like you said, communities and get that community feedback, if nothing else, because it's hard, because a lot of technology, like you said, is in isolation, and there's folks out there producing amazing things, whether or not they're part of a company or not. Open source developers, for example, they rely on word of mouth a lot of the time, and you know, traction in the community around a particular library is kind of organic. And for those that are really just trying to make sure that it happens a bit less organic, and try and give it a kick boost, and try and get people to, you know, knock down that issue count on something that's been struggling for a while and make it better for everyone globally. Organizing a hackathon around open source is really interesting as well. So yeah, have you seen any really interesting perspectives on open source contributions?
I've seen it here in the UK. There was an organizer. So it's actually an interesting story. And there's lots of things in, I wouldn't say it's hackathon specific, but I think it's community and collaboration specific, that I haven't been able to, I guess, resolve in my head or find a way of doing that kind of fits everybody. But there was an organizer who's a good friend who hosts an open source hackathon for political technology. And it's really, the hackathon was named Tory Tech. I'm not sure the Conservative Party you have over there. I'm not sure the name of it, but I guess it's just Conservatives, right? I'm not sure. But
that works.
Yeah. it was named, let's say, Conservative Tech, right? Even though it was, the technology being developed was open source for everybody, for community. And it's really interesting how communities work and how we form, and how names like Conservative Tech can really influence how people come, who comes, and how they influence the technology. I think open source is difficult. We talk about, I mentioned a little bit about facilitating. If you're in a team, you have to both be a contributor and a facilitator. If you're open source, let's say you start open source or you start a project, you both have to be a facilitator and a contributor. And again, it's extremely hard. Over here with Tory Tech, there's some of the issues they were having is that before people can even get into the best solutions, there was ideologies, there was biases, there was like regular people things that we had to get over. And I think that's particularly difficult. It was an open source project, but this is what I talk about, build the value of building with a community. It helps your professional life, it helps your personal life to really engage lots of different demographics and be able to disagree, but to still be able to work with people. I think I don't think we've been able to do that You see some of the coronavirus response all over the world. This is not a Western thing. It's not a UK thing. It's like literally all over the world. You have so many different groups, people identifying as different things, people speaking different languages, have different cultural heritages, and being able to get everybody to contribute, especially when it comes to open source. Open source is particularly interesting because it's designed, the intention is meant to be for the benefit of the whole. And it's particularly difficult to have something that's been the benefit for a whole if you don't have lots of different people working on it. But this doesn't just happen organically. And I say this to founders all the time from what I'm learning from hackathons. If you want a certain demographic to help, you have to literally go and get them to help. You don't just build the project and hoping they will come, hoping these types of developers will come. It just, people don't work like that. You have to go and attract the talent and give them a compelling reason to join and work in your community. And I think that's not spoken about enough, especially when building communities and the value of building communities. The value that they bring is definitely worth it with all demographics. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, we have a few local things that come out, like health hack and gov hack, and so that, again, the more you know, I guess the government driven, I guess, ideas out of that, and so and a lot of those are really interesting around like open access to information, and like you know, data insights, big data kind of processing approaches, and those kinds of things as well. So I just jumped in here just to be able to pick out a few more questions. So Rod's jumped in with community engagement is clearly the crucial aspect here. As a technologist, it's tricky to do this. Can you give us insight on the kind of comms that should go?
A lot of it is you have to be a part of these other communities. I tell a story about what I was doing. I wanted to engage other groups. So I'm a straight male. I was going to LGBTQ events to meet those people. Even though, especially in the UK, most of us speak English, there's nuances in language and culture, and we might be saying the same word, meaning different things. So you have to get accustomed to all these different demographics. And I don't think there's an automated way. You know, you can't just run Facebook ads to get a certain demographic to come to your hackathon. Or to contribute to your tech. It's
very corporate response, isn't it?
Yeah.
Targeted ads.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't work. But you have to really understand language. It's the great part of hackathons, but it's the most difficult part. But I feel if you can be a part of communities and really, I want to say master, I don't think you ever really master it, but if you can really get good at that, I feel no matter what industry you go to, no matter what company you go to, you will be highly effective. And that is all a part of community. And community, we say community is like a monolith, but there's lots of sub-communities, and there's lots of different, and some of those sub-communities conflict in ideologies and values. So what do you do if you get, let's say you have two talented people, conflicting ideologies, conflicting values? As a facilitator, as a project leader, as the founder of an open source project, how do you get them on the same page? You know, they're both skills complement each other, but their ideologies differ. You have to understand both of them intimately, or at least their views intimately, to try and find a ground that they can both stand on to work on this project. And what I think companies have done, they have built systems to kind of ignore the individuals, you know, their personal preferences, whether it's mothers, whether it's women, whether it's young males, no matter the group, we have built a system that ignores all the individuals. And I think the value is in all the individuals' differences. Especially there's this big conversation that's been going on about AI and how we're going to be replaced by AI and all of that. And when I really when I'm a part of all these communities, I find it hard on a human creativity level and a human difference level. On computation, yes, they're gonna outcrunch us in numbers and computation, but there's a whole art to being human, that there's a nuance to being human, that's where the innovation really lies. It's not in the logical side. The innovation really lies in two random people coming together and coming up with a completely novel idea because they've blended features they loved about their culture. Let's take food. Let's say if you do a food hack and coming up with new dishes, they blended, I don't know, a Caribbean cuisine and a British cuisine, and now they get something new. But this is how humanity has evolved over time. And this has been the best part of humanity's evolution. With the rise in technology in recent years, I think we've kind of forgot that.
Yeah, it's Australia has always sort of been quoted to have that melting pot approach to everything. Everyone coming in, being rather multicultural, and trying to sort of bring that together as a benefit for sure. And having, for the last sort of 5 years, and extremely accelerated in the last 2 years, being part of a global company. I'm attending calls with folks from Dubai and Hong Kong and, just literally all over the world, and London, and in all time zones, and, uniting that. And that's a different culture to be in as well, like understanding that, everyone will have different, language skills and different cultural backgrounds and different sayings. And that kind of approach in an enterprise is also, got its own challenges. And then trying to apply that to a meetup style culture, that's what it boils down to then in your hackathon. Yeah. And then you're rallying around a particular thing. So if you're a project leader or a scrum master in a current organization, you're interested in trying to get these clashing cultures to work effectively together because they would complement each other. Just imagine doing that at the scale of the hackathon, and that's the same sort of challenge that you're facing there, isn't it?
I've been playing with the analogy of, to me, if you can, I'm not sure if you taught young children, but if you can get young children on the same page, doing the same thing and having fun and wanting to do that, I think you can make a much better leader as a CEO of a big company than taking a CEO of a big company and getting them to get. But what's happening in hackathons is a very similar thing. There's a lot of self-organizing. People have their own interests. People have their own beliefs. And they might not even really want to do what you want to do. How do you get them on the same page? And I think facilitating talent is really what you learn about building with a community. How do I facilitate other people's talent? It's my progression over time as a technologist has been being less about product and more about people. And if I can really get people working on the same page, I think product kind of just works itself out if you understand people. The product's the easy part, the people's the hard part, but building with a community is what you learn this. If you choose to, it's something you have to be looking for. You have to be open to understanding other people. And I think that's the start, because you have to realize, especially here in the UK, there's clashes between culture that are generations deep. Sometimes, you might say something and you don't mean any harm, but because of the generations of cultural conflict, it actually might be harmful. So how do you work around that? And you really have to, it's a person by person basis. And some people at this particular time might not be ready for that relationship with you, but maybe in 6 months' time, they might be at a different point where they can work through a relationship with you. But you learn this at hackathons. You learn this when you're really building projects with communities. The great thing about a hackathon is that there's no commitment, and there's no, I guess, like you was mentioning working for a big company now, you're kind of scared to get it wrong. Like if your job's on the line, especially if you have a family, an interaction with somebody, you don't want to mess up an interaction with your boss, or you don't want to mess up an interaction with a colleague that's working on an important project or who's been there a long time. So you're not as you maybe take a little bit submissive role, especially instead of trying to really like connect with them on an intimate level. There's a lot of friction there, but to really connect with people in the community, you have to be willing to kind of embrace that friction. And that happens in hackathons all the time, and it doesn't always work. And that's the downside of it. It doesn't always work.
Yeah, that also kind of takes us into the second part of Rod's question. There is not many people engage with hackathons. The corp I'm at celebrates intellectual diversity. How do we engage people who don't engage with hackathons? So, you know, some people have just sort of kind of written it off. They're like, it's not my scene, or, you know, but, you know, you tend to, I guess, like any different community in a particular locality, you'll start to attract the same folks that are like the hackathon goers. And then, you know, attracting diversity in that group again is like, oh, okay, well, we've got this subsection there where the Venn diagram of everyone intersects, where people do actually engage with hackathons. How do you, you know, break people out of that particular cycle and start to engage them further?
Well, I'm in the developer group that actively goes to hackathons, so I had to step back to understand this. But the word hackathon is not welcoming to a lot of people, actually most of the population. And I can understand especially how associated with tech is being, and how limiting tech has been in the people that we've welcomed into the circle. If you have a hackathon and they have to make an app, you naturally exclude a lot of people that cannot make an app at all. And then you have some people that can kind of make an app, but they're anxious whether it's going to be good enough. And those are, for me, that's a lot of good ideas and experiences you exclude. And obviously, if you have an API and you're trying to push your API, that's your interest. If you're trying to build ideas and community, you have to really think about how you communicate what we're trying to do. And I think the word hackathon, the word hack, the word hackers, it has a public persona. This is why I'm trying to do what I do in terms of media and publish the stories, because there's lots of hackathons that know they haven't programmed anything and they won, and the people that programmed didn't win anything. People are running designathons where you just come and design. People are running ideathons where you just come up with ideas. They're running business case competitions. I call them innovation challenges, which is my umbrella, but there's lots of different things that come under it. Some of the events over here have been people were developing marketing campaigns. So if you let's say the environment is what you really care about, maybe in this localized area, maybe you get people together over a weekend to come up with a marketing campaign, come up with the creative, come up with the strategy, and deploy the marketing campaign. And maybe in a couple more months' time, you have another hackathon. And we, as tech people, have not been inclusive. That's our fault. And that's why our companies are the way they are. That's why our algorithms are biased the way they are. Sorry.
Yeah, and so you've
got fix that.
Yeah, and you've got those situations where you say hackathon, you know, like that. Oh, that's it seems so technical. We want people to produce something for a particular tech need, or like there's even in your health sort of driven challenges. Taking it back to that one, there's we're going to give you a bunch of data, or I think a part of that messaging then becomes really interesting around, oh, we actually need different skills, folks. Yeah. We're actually like, hey, can you write? Cool, we need you. Can you design? We need you.
Yeah. I think the key for me is people's experiences. That's all I want them to bring. Just bring your experiences, because I'm a facilitator, so I'll be able to, and this is our real job as technologists. we can translate people's experiences into tangible products. And that's the role, whether you're an engineer or you're just a random builder. If you're I was an architecture student. If you're an architect, you take people's vision and you take their experiences and you translate it into a building. And I think that's our real role. I think we've got caught up in, we need to build an app. And it's more like we need to be able to add some framework to their experiences and their problems. Because people do have ideas, but the way it's ordered and structured maybe isn't in a way that it can turn into something tangible in real life. And it's maybe it should be called, you know, instead of health hack, maybe health competition or something like that, that people say, oh, that's interesting. The hack and hackathon is just, it's not working for people.
Makes sense.
No.
All right. No new questions on the list.
Okay.
Anyone on the chat, if you guys are keen to jump in there, folks? Anyone? I guess, yeah, I mean, the floor is still all yours, of course, to go and, you know, maybe leave us with some parting comments or anything that you think is, you know, the way that we really have to, you know, close off this session. Keep everything in mind.
I want to place special focus on, I spoke a lot about community and I spoke a lot about individual relationships, and my actual theory with community, and this is just observational learning and seeing at hackathons, is that we are impacted more by our peer relationships than we are by, I guess, our manager or our boss. And we interact a lot more with our peers than our manager and boss. Our manager and boss, or let's say society structure, this sets up the framework, just like a hackathon facilitator. All a hackathon facilitator can do is give you a venue, provide you food, set up the framework, but it's about those individual connections between people that give it real meaning. And that's one of the biggest things I take away from hackathons, but it applies to a greater scope of life in that, whether in your local community or your country or your town or your city, it's about the individual connection. So every time you meet someone, what's the exchange? If it's a negative exchange, if there's no exchange of ideas or there's no exchange of experiences, that's an opportunity lost to really impact someone's life and also gain something. That is the real value of community. As a BrisJS, all you can do is give people the room and give the people the floor to connect, but it's on the individual people to really touch each other. And I think we need to focus a lot more on really touching each other and connecting as human beings. Like I said, we love technology, but technology, like the meaning of technology to us is to benefit human life. And we need to focus on those individual connections between people and not so much the technology.
Get that networking going. Make sure that happens. Yeah, the microcosm of a hackathon and those parallels that we've been drawing tonight, between, you know, your working life within teams and those kinds of things. If you know, if you're somebody that is seeking experience or to further your career and working in industry, again, if you want to accelerate that, I guess the hackathon experience is something that you will find is it's like another workplace just for a weekend, right? So you've gone and you've had to form a team, you had to work together, you've had to produce outcomes and all those different things. You have to deal with time pressures, and you're going to be meeting people in the local communities and areas and things like that, and that accelerates your ability to then connect with the people around, in this case, Brisbane. So, you know, you don't have to have gone through 6 workplaces first to be able to be like the old hat in that community, right? You could have already like doubled that number by going to an animal hackathon. So I think, there's definitely a great message in that. That's awesome.
There's so community, and we've undervalued it, and maybe we've taken it for granted because we have Facebook, we had Twitter, and we mistake me tweeting someone for me really connecting with someone. And I think that shouldn't be taken for granted. And every day we have the opportunity to really connect with people. And that's where, if you're an innovator, if you're a builder, that's where you should thrive. And that's where the mixing of experiencing and the mixing of ideas is literally how civilizations, how cultures were built, how some of our most favorite things in the world were built from 2 or more people really connecting on an intimate level. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Great words to close off on. You know, thanks again for bringing us this wonderful, insightful comments and getting us to think deep and hard about the people and the work that we do them with. What I'll do is I'll throw up my closing slides so people have the links to everything as well, and make sure that hopefully everyone's still got video of our faces. There we go. Yeah, so thanks again, and thanks for coming and doing this across the world. I guess this is one of the main benefits of us now being live and online in the COVID world. Is it's no longer entirely just for Brisbane. It's great for Brisbane audiences. Like we can get speakers from all around the world. So again, circling back around to that whole you know, diverse experience and making sure that we can get you know, all of those different ideas on board. So thank you again. And, you know, hopefully we'll have you back sometime soon.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. It sounds great.
That's fantastic. All right, cool. And everyone at home, these are the different bits and pieces, the details that you've got there. If you've got any more questions for Dominic, we do have the GitHub issue on our board. And, you know, if you've got anything that you'd like to send his way, I'm happy to be a conduit, a facilitator for that kind of thing. So all my details are there as well. And yeah, hopefully you can get in touch and keep this conversation going. Do remember to contribute your talks. So there you go, get involved with working with the community. So if you want to get involved in our community and go out and say, oh, hey, everyone, this is something you can look into. This is a library I've developed. All those same things. Encourage people, reach out to those audiences. You know, we're here and we have an incredibly diverse audience in BrisJS, and having our usual sort of 120, 130 people events is also something that has been fantastic as an audience and as a presenter to be able to speak to. So do recognize the value in local community events, as well as trying to reach out to folks trying to organize hackathons and hackathon-like events. It doesn't have to go with that name. And yeah, well, hopefully you can engage and see the benefits in all those things as well. So thanks in advance to everyone at home. And I'm going to leave that final slide up. And with that, thanks very much, everyone, for tuning in and spending your Monday night with us. And thanks again.